All right, so this is going to be a brief introduction into the composite drafting method. What we're going to do with the composite drafting method is compile language and content that your team has already created and repurpose it for a new kind of copy, a proposal, or a report. For our purposes today, we're going to be walking through a grant report for the St. Luke's Youth Center. We go by SLIC, where I proudly serve as the board secretary. The first thing that I typically do when I'm preparing a new grant report is I get started on my starting prompt. A starting prompt when we're talking about generative AI is the first prompt that you're going to give to that generative AI chatbot. That chatbot is going to use this starting prompt in order to build context for what kind of task it needs to complete, what kind of instructions you're going to give it, and how it should approach completing this task. In that way, it's not really different than asking your teammate for help and providing them with some guidance on how you can work together on completing this task. What I always include in my starting prompts is I include an overview of the role, an overview of the core responsibilities. And for this task, the chatbot needs to act as a grant writer, supporting nonprofits and reporting. The core responsibilities are going to be interpreting the questions and requirements, drafting a compelling response, ensuring compliance with those requirements, and providing responses that are both professional and to some extent free of jargon. What I then want to do is I want to provide some context for the nonprofit that is going to be submitting the report. I always include the lead and the title, the name of the nonprofit, and an overview about the vision, mission, values, and programs and services that the nonprofit provides. When it comes to the funder, I just want the chatbot to know what's the funder's name and some information about the funder, typically similar to the nonprofit, something about its vision, mission, values, and its funding priorities. Since this is a grant report for an award that has already been issued, we want to include how much was awarded, what's the performance period that we are reporting against, and what were the outcomes that the nonprofit committed to. The knowledge base is the attachments of reference material that the chatbot can access in order to pull in additional context. The last item that I leave the chatbot with is some instructions. I tell the chatbot that I'm going to provide it questions from the grant funder. I want to reference the material that's provided, and I want it to walk through these questions one at a time. The other important piece of guidance that I offer the chatbot is to only draft a response once it has 95% of the information that it needs to provide a quality response. If it has less than 95% of the information needed, I want it to ask me questions. I want it to ask me clarification questions so I can fill in those blanks. Something that I think is a good practice for yourself and for your partners is to include a link to the chatbot feed that you are drafting with so that you can, if you need to walk away from the task, you can quickly jump back to it. Or if your colleagues want to review the chat themselves, see how you're developing that language, learn themselves, or audit your work, they have that ability to do so. So the next thing you're going to want to do is to pull in your report questions. You might do this right below the starting prompt. You might open this and add it to a separate document. You can format your questions however you like. As a personal preference, I like to bold my questions and include text boxes that I can color code. I like to color code my text boxes by indicating that gray is, drafted, low priority to review, typically organizational information type content that doesn't need as close of scrutiny. And then I like to indicate yellow means that this has been drafted and needs review. Red means that I need input from one of my colleagues. And green typically means that this has been, drafted, reviewed, and is good to go. I always include in my drafting documents an attachment section. I create the attachment section separately, and I typically link the attachment from my Google Drive. Okay, so once you have your drafting document ready and your starting prompt ready, you can go ahead and open your chatbot. For today, we are going to use ChatGPT. Specifically, we are going to be using the GPT 4.0 with Canvas model. Now, this is only available with a pro account. Pro accounts do cost $20 per month. I want to demonstrate what you're able to do with the pro account because the Canvas model does have some additional features that I think are worth considering. You can edit, you can add more attachments to your knowledge base, and you just get a higher quality output in terms of the language that they're using because it does a better job of reasoning. One thing to note about ChatGPT is that if you are concerned about confidentiality, if you are concerned about the anonymity of your data, you can use their temporary chat feature. In the temporary chat feature, the chat is not going to appear in your history. It's not going to create memories. Memories means that in the 4.0 model specifically, it allows you to remember context across chat feeds. And importantly, the data that you put in is not going to be included in any of their model training. So if you're concerned about not giving ChatGPT your data for model training, and if you're concerned about anything with the confidentiality of your data, you can use the temporary chat feed, but you will not have access to the Canvas itself. So again, for today, we are going to use the Canvas feature, and we will not be using the temporary chat. The next thing you're going to want to do is to pull information into your chatbot to serve as its knowledge base. The knowledge base is the data that the chatbot references first before it goes to any other data in its model. For today's demonstration, we're going to pull in Slick's FY24 end of year report. This is a retrospective look at the previous fiscal year. We're going to pull in the original grant application that was awarded. We're going to pull in the original letter of inquiry that was awarded. And we're going to be pulling in the FY25 operating budget, which includes a narrative outlook for the upcoming year. And a document that I think is nice to include in your knowledge base is a document that can serve as a tonal baseline. It really captures the personality of your organization and can help the chatbot understand the kind of culture, context, and voice of your organization. So you're going to go to the chatbot. You're going to upload the knowledge base. And then as the knowledge base is getting added, you'll go back to your starting prompt and you will copy and paste that starting prompt into the chat box and hit enter. You'll see that it's reading the documents and it's doing as we instructed it. It is asking us to start with the first question that we would like assistance with. We're not going to go through every question today. We're going to go through a couple and just demonstrate some of the features that you'll be able to interact with in the chatbot. Okay, so let's go to the first question. So we're going to copy that question. We're going to ask the chatbot to respond to this question. And you'll see it works very quickly, much more quickly than we could, compiling and synthesizing information from the knowledge base. All right, now that you have a response drafted, you're going to want to shift into your role as an editor. As an editor, you're going to want to take a look at two orders of revisions. The highest level order of revisions is a structural revision, and then the second order of revisions is a line level revision. A structural revision, should take priority because it's going to typically influence like the way that the entire section is presented. Some of the structural revisions you might consider are tonal revisions. Is it actually taking the tone of voice using the language and personality that you want to use? And then another structural revision might be the format of the document. Do you want it to numerically present the information? Do you want structured headers? Do you want it broken down into finer bullets? Those types of structural changes are changes that you'll want to make at the outset before you get to the line level revisions. So I'm going to encourage you to read through the response once, consider the high level revisions. One other structural level revision that you'll want to consider is the word count and character length. Let's see how long this is. So this is 514 words long. Let's assume that we need this to be under 300 words. We really need to shorten it. I've never seen ChatGPT get the word count exact. It's always something that you need to check, but the word count, character count is going to be in that first order structural revisions. So we're going to ask ChatGPT to make those revisions. We're going to say, please revise this response incorporating following. So one, I want it to, be more personable. Just want to give it a tonal shift. I'm going to say, reference the history and hopes document for tone and style. I want to ask it to revise to be written in paragraph form and include the section headers. I don't need the numerical list. And then lastly, I want it to shorten to 300 words or less. And let's see how this reads different. Now look at that. It didn't actually include the headers, which, it's not perfect. But let's see if it at least got the tonal shift. Okay, so first, they nailed it making it shorter. It didn't necessarily include the headers, but after reading it, I'm not entirely sure that it needs the headers. I thought that it was a fairly easy read. And it got the word count with 15 words to spare. So our high level structural changes, our structural revisions are there. Now we want to move into line level edits. You can take the copy and you can move it directly into the document and you could make those line level edits yourself. If we were using ChatGPT 4.0 or any earlier version, we would have to do that, or we'd have to like go back and forth with the actual chat feed over here. But some of the updates with Canvas allow you to make edits within the canvas itself. Here, it would allow you to adjust the length if you wanted to. I prompted it with the specific numerical length that I wanted. It would allow you to adjust it for reading level. It could add finish and polish. It could also add emojis. I don't really use any of these features over here. It's nice that they have them, but the feature that you might actually use is being able to highlight a section and asking ChatGPT to change that specific section itself. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and copy this answer into my text box because I think that this is a pretty solid draft. I don't really want to lose track of that draft. And in this section here, because they asked us to disaggregate data, I actually wanted to include the data about how many youth are in those specific zip codes. So I want it to revise this paragraph to include the number of families and youth served from the 21223 zip code and the number of youth and families served by the entire organization. And this is the nice thing about Canvas is that it will allow you to make direct inline edits. So let's ask it to make another structural revision. Let's say, flip these paragraphs, provide the reader with context for the total number of families and youth served before presenting finer data, the number of served per zip code or GPA and academic scores. Also, include information on the grade level improvements because they did leave that out from the original version. So what you'll see is that it has swapped those paragraphs. It's kept that data. It also added that the composite scores were increased by at least one full grade level, which was incorporated in the first version of the draft, but not the second version of the draft. And so what I can do here is I can take just those two paragraphs and I can add them in. All right, so the next thing that I want to demonstrate is how to provide ChatGPT with some additional context before it drafts its initial response. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to respond to this with that additional context. Because, ChatGPT is a natural language processor that likes to think in logic models. I like to provide it with hierarchies in prompts particularly when I need it to know how I want it to reference material. So I use this and that language pretty often, this, that, and these pretty often, so that I can just be sure that it understands the association with the information that I'm giving it. So I'm asking it to, again, respond to this with that additional context. It, is going to need to provide me with information about significant organization changes in leadership, staff, facilities. So I want it to emphasize the professional development being completed by the staff, including the specific certifications. I want it to include that we welcomed a new board president who is a founder and social worker at Franklin Square EMS. And yeah, that's good. I think that's good. Oh, and then the last thing is that we added 2 Maryland Service Corps members who will provide in-school supports. Yeah. And let's just, I see that response and it's just a little longer than I want to see. So I'm going to say I'm going to shorten to 2 paragraphs. I would like to edit this because I want it to make clear that Sonia is a founder of Slick, and add that staff have received athletic certifications as well. All right, great. So we'll take that, we'll copy, we'll paste it, we'll make sure it meets the word and character count, and we'll keep doing that for each of the questions that are included in the grant report. All right, guys, so these are the basics of the composite drafting method. As you can see, the quality of the end product is largely influenced by the quality of the pre-work, preparing that starting prompt, making sure the chat bot is aligned and understands the task at hand, preparing the knowledge base so that you have comprehensive and relevant information about your organization and the grant funder as it relates to the assignment, and preparing your drafting document so that you are ready to pull in context related to the relevant draft. I greatly appreciate your time sitting through this demonstration. I hope this was informative and that it might give you an idea of how you might use ChatGPT or another chat bot in order to optimize your time on technical writing tasks.